Now that's original.
Good morning and welcome to Original Thursday. Today I'm going to share with you one of my most favorite songs of all time. I would say it's definitely in my top 10. It's a song called King of the Jews, and I will be bending the rules with regard to Original Thursday because I didn't write this song. Pap didn't write this song. No personal friend of mine wrote this song. However, Pap did write a third verse to the song, and I'll sing that verse as well. After you hear the song, I'll kind of come back and tell you more about this gentleman right here. This is who I learned the song from, Mr. David Marshall. And you can see that's the name of this album, King of the Jews. I'll tell you, I wish I knew a lot more about David Marshall, but I tell you what I do know about him, what I do know sort of about the song. And I'll talk about why Pap decided to write a third verse to it. After we've talked about the song, some other things I want to do in this video. I want to talk a little bit about our live stream that we had just the other day. I want to share with you how my opportunity went, where I was able to play with the great Doyle Dykes in a Christmas concert down in Chattanooga just last night, because I'm filming this on a Wednesday. And then I want to tell you about an upcoming video that I hope to do here on the channel. And so a lot of other things to talk about, but for right now I'll let you go ahead and hear this great song, King of the Jews. All I ever wanted was to be loved. The way I went about it was never from above. But now deep in my heart there's a good man who wants to be free. So, King of the Jews, may I carry your shoes and follow thee. All I have to offer is me, and I know I ain't much, Lord, for you to see. But such as I am, I hope you're understanding me. King of the Jews, may I carry your shoes and follow thee. King of kings, Prince of peace, pure perfect Lamb who came to set us free. Son of God, Son of man, in whom the Father's well pleased. King of the Jews, could I carry your shoes and follow thee? Oh, King of the Jews, let me carry your shoes and wash your feet. I hope you enjoyed that song. And of course, the phrase King of the Jews is really something that was used to mock Jesus leading up to his crucifixion and during his crucifixion with the crown of thorns and him being designated that way. It was probably, I think historians would agree that it was not only a mocking of him, but also maybe even a mocking of the Jewish people from the Roman soldiers. Like, look at your king, look what we do to your king. Of course, Jesus is the King of all kings, and his kingdom, what they really couldn't realize at the time, but he didn't come here to establish an earthly kingdom. His kingdom was in the hearts of humanity for now. Of course, there will be a kingdom that he will reign over in a more physical sense eternally. But anyway, that's where that phrase comes from. And unfortunately, I don't know who wrote this song. Maybe some acorn out there with some good research can find out who wrote this song. I think it's possible that David Marshall may have written the song, the gentleman that I heard sing it, and I will have a link in the description below where you can hear that. There are a lot of other songs by this title, so if you start searching and trying to find who wrote this song, you can find a lot of different results. For example, one that I saw was Phil Keaggy, who was this brilliant Christian musician, guitar player, singer that I only learned about recently through Caleb Dykes. He had a song called King of the Jews, but it's a different song. So, like I said, I wasn't able to find out. I think I showed this a couple of times, but maybe didn't get it close enough. So there's David Marshall. And in a previous video, at some point, I talked about the huge impact that Wade Powell II had on me in terms of musical influence. Well, this would be one way that he influenced me, which was by exposing me to the music of David Marshall. David Marshall is nowhere near as well known as I think he should be. He's not famous per se, but I think people who really, really know their bluegrass and acoustic music, they know about the Marshall family and they know about David Marshall. But I probably would have never known about him if not for Wade Powell. So Wade Powell had this album, he had this cassette. His was actually a different cover. If I remember correctly, it was all black on the front, and there was just a headshot of David Marshall with a beard. Here, David Marshall just has a mustache. But one reason that Wade had this recording, I'll turn it over on the back. You might be able to see that it says distributed by Smitty Productions, Pine Top Road, London, Kentucky. That's the same distributor that distributed the Wilson Brothers recordings, Pap and Ray. And at that particular time, and I think we made maybe 3, 4, 5 albums up at Wade's studio, and Wade would sell the master to Smitty's Productions, and that would kind of fund the recording costs. So Pap and Ray didn't have to pay Wade anything directly. He got his money by selling the master to Smitty. And then Smitty would distribute and sell as many recordings as he wanted to, kind of all over the Southeast and maybe beyond. But that didn't mean that Pap and Ray couldn't also print as many recordings as they wanted to and sell. Now, I don't know if he had the same arrangement with David Marshall, but like I said, he was distributing David Marshall's tapes. I never got to meet Smitty. Wade always dealt with him directly. He must have been a pretty sort of entrepreneurial type guy, because I remember he had his tapes. He had tapes like this for sale in Walmart. Now, how an independent guy, Southern guy, was able to pull that off, I don't know. Someone, I guess that secret maybe went on with Smitty. I'm assuming Smitty's not still around. But anyway, that's why Wade had this recording. I have some other recordings of David Marshall. After I heard this one, Pap and I listened to this recording hundreds of times in the vehicle when we were driving places, and sometimes we would just go out to the car and just sit and listen to this recording. And there goes this camera. I'm afraid it's starting to get dark again for no reason, but it is what it is. After I heard that recording, I tried to get any others that I could find. Here's David Marshall, Keep a Light Burning, which is also a very good album. I wouldn't say it's as good as The King of the Jews, but also very good. And then here's an older album, I think, that goes back into the 70s, and you can kind of tell by the attire of the gentleman there. This one's called Gospel Road. And then I have another one. I think I took this one from Wade because I knew he probably wasn't going to listen to it as much as I did, and he might even misplace it. I'll pick on Wade. He's prone to misplace things like this. So you can see I don't have the insert or the album art. I just have, that's the way I got it from Wade when I took it. This one's Land of Peace. Now, these two albums, it's mostly all trio stuff with one other male singer and a female singer, and they did really tight trio work. So these kind of are different than these two. I think these two maybe preceded these two, I'm not sure. I said that it was possible that David Marshall may have written King of the Jews. Most of these tapes don't list who wrote anything on them, but this particular one has a lot more information. You know, it has this sort of prologue, I guess you'd say, that he's written, and it tells you who wrote the songs. And David Marshall wrote a lot of the songs on this album, and so I'm thinking that he did write a lot of his material, and that was one reason why maybe I haven't heard anybody else do those. One of David Marshall's most famous songs that he co-wrote with Joe Isaacs. If you're not familiar with Joe Isaac, he was kind of the patriarch of the Isaac family, which was a big bluegrass gospel group. He performed with them for a while, and then that younger generation also just kind of went on their own. Kind of the most well-known member of that family would be, I want to say her name is Sonia. She was a young lady, when I would see that family all the time. Great mandolin player, great singer. But anyway, Joe Isaac and David Marshall apparently were friends, and they co-wrote a wonderful gospel song called I Press Through the Crowd. You may have heard that song. That might be a good one to do on another old-timey Tuesday. Sometimes I see David Marshall credited with having written or at least arranged the old song, I've Just Seen the Rock of Ages, Jacob's Ladder Coming Down. And that's kind of a signature song for Nick Powell, who I featured last week here on the Blind Pig channel. He used to sing that song a lot. Now, I don't know if he heard it from David Marshall, but I think the way he was singing it was kind of the arrangement that David Marshall developed, which is just a very kind of haunting, lonesome arrangement of that song. I could go on and on about David Marshall, but even though I don't know that much about him, it just hit me a few years ago that he was, and it was kind of subconscious, but he was a big influence on me musically. Pap and I put out an album. I should have had it here so I could hold it up, but we put out a CD called Lamp Lighting Time, and it had a couple of songs on it that I learned from David Marshall. One was Younger Days, which is not exactly a gospel song. It's just, you'd almost just have to hear it to know how to classify it, but it's just a song about how time affects you and how you age and how you look back to your younger years, but it's called Younger Days. We did that song. We also did another song called Don't Hurt the Best, which is really a song reaching out to parents who are not doing the right thing and warning them about the dangers of not treating their children right and abusing their children. And I think it came off of one of these two albums here. But two, that CD that Pap and I made, it has 10 or 12 songs, and then two of them are from David Marshall. It just didn't even register on me at the time how much he was influencing what we were doing. Another way that he influenced me, he was one of the first if not the very first, sort of bluegrass guy that I ever heard use a nylon string or classical or catgut guitar, whatever you want to call that, in his music. A lot of folks would think, man, that's out of place. What's that doing in here? But it sounds great now if you go about it the right way. In fact, his recording of "I Press Through the Crowd," that's the main instrument, is a nylon string guitar, and it's just so beautiful. So David Marshall, and this would be a third way that he influenced me. So I've talked about material, I've talked about sort of instrument selection there with that guitar or guitar selection. A third way that he influenced me is the idea of don't be afraid to do things that are different. So in David Marshall's recording of King of the Jews, it has an acoustic guitar, flat top guitar, kind of played with the fingers, a little bit more of an Earl Scruggs style than, say, a Doyle Dykes style. That part's not unusual, but then when it comes to the break, it's a saxophone. Now that is completely out of left field. It's beautiful. It works great. But what bluegrass guy says, hey, I know what we'll do. We'll have a saxophone break in the middle of this song. And here's the credits for the inside of this album. And it says the saxophone was played by Al Talib. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. The only thing it says that David Marshall plays here is banjo. And I think that was his primary instrument, but I think he was playing other instruments most likely too. And it only says Joe Isaac just played guitar, but I'm almost positive that Joe Isaac is singing on There Once Was a Man, which was another favorite song of me and Pat. It's actually called Man on the Mule, but that's the main line in there. There once was a man riding a mule. I'm almost positive Joe Isaac was singing the lead and that David Marshall was singing the tenor. There's just more things that keep popping into my head about him. He was an amazing harmony singer, not just lead singer, but his tenor was, man, it was just out of this world. Now, I would kind of put him in a category. This is something I've never talked about on the channel, although I've been very aware of it, in terms of like a category of a style that was clearly influenced by a certain person. I've talked about how you have Merle Haggard, who was directly influenced by Lefty Frizzell, and then boom, countless country singers adopt that style, pursue that style. In fact, probably too many. Probably a lot more singers should kind of do their own thing and not do that Haggard style. Mark Wheeler is excellent. I've talked about Mark here on the channel in The Marksman. Mark is one of those guys that should have done that style because he was so good at it. But you've got Merle Haggard, you got Lefty Frizzell, Keith Whitley, Mark Wheeler. At some point, I think other folks should do something different and not just keep trying to go after that same style. But, they love it and they want to do what they hear. You could say the same thing about Tony Rice's guitar playing in bluegrass. So Tony Rice, directly influenced by Clarence White. It's almost like that Lefty and Haggard thing again. You got Clarence White playing this certain style, and then Tony Rice so in love with that style, and then taking it to new levels and just getting it out there. And so then you have thousands and thousands of bluegrass guitar players who are playing a Tony Rice style of guitar. Well, so here's the connection there with David Marshall. You have Ralph and Carter Stanley, the Stanley brothers, creating this certain vocal style. And then you have thousands of other people singing in that style. And I would say the same thing, probably too many. Now you have some people who were just kind of lightly influenced like that by Ricky Skaggs. Ricky Skaggs primarily sounds like Ricky Skaggs, but within him you can hear his influence of the Stanley brothers, and you can definitely hear, of course, the influence of Bill Monroe, but pretty much doing his own thing. But then you have a lot of other people who sound a lot more, or maybe more closely. You can hear the influence stronger. People who sing in that Stanley Brothers style, you have the other Wilson brothers who were kind of from that Kentucky area. If you've ever watched the program that used to come on RFD, oh my goodness, what was the name of that show? It was filmed at the old home place of Bill Monroe. I can picture the gentleman who ran that show. He was a veterinarian, and he just loved bluegrass, particularly Bill Monroe style. I'll try to find out, and I'll put his name. I'll put the name of the show maybe down at the bottom of the screen, or some of you all might have watched that show, and you might be able to answer in the comments. But almost everybody on that show sang in that Stanley Brothers style, and you had one of the surviving Wilson brothers who would appear on there at times. Again, not our Wilson brothers, but that other more Kentucky set of the Wilson brothers. So you had they sang in that style. You have Larry Sparks is an excellent practitioner of that Carter Stanley vocal style. Not to say that he doesn't bring his own, style as well, but definitely. Of everybody who sings in that style, I would say David Marshall is the best vocalist in that style. Sort of like sort of like Tony Rice took that Clarence White guitar playing and just put it on another level. That's kind of what you have with David Marshall. One thing unique, and I don't mean this insultingly at all toward anybody else, but one thing unique about him singing that style, never off key, never just so much like I'm doing that traditional bluegrass vocal that I'm going to do it this way, the way the guys before me did it, even if it's wrong. With David Marshall, it's a lot more vocal control. The way Pap described David Marshall's singing, he said he has so much melody in his voice. So everything that he ever sang was every word. A lot of times my singing, maybe I'm imparting the melody and kind of in the key places and the key notes, but there are lots of words and notes in between that are just a little flat, not in the sense of being flat off key, but just they're not rich with that melody. They're just kind of there connecting those primary notes, if that makes sense. With David Marshall, it's like everything that comes out of his mouth is the melody and melodic, and it's so natural and has such great feeling. That song, King of the Jews, to me is such a great song of humility, and it's a song that almost anyone who has been saved through Christ can identify with. That feeling of humbling yourself before the righteousness of Christ and the great mercy and grace of Christ, that I'm nothing, but you still love me, and I don't have anything to offer you but my soul, but myself. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off track, but given that nature of that song, he's the perfect person to sing it, because that's just kind of his style. He just comes across that way. Everything is so melodic, everything is so sincere and sounds so heartfelt. Now, the link that I put below, I believe, is to a channel owned or kind of originally put up by the grandson of Joe Isaacs. Now, Joe Isaac would be another practitioner of that Stanley style. And I hope I'm not offending anybody. I would like to think that all these folks, Larry Sparks, Joe Isaacs, David Marshall, I would like to think that they would all acknowledge, that's our style. We sing in that Stanley Brothers style. Again, not to say that they don't add things to it and maybe take it to places that the Stanleys, didn't. But anyway, it could have been on that channel, the grandson of Joe Isaacs, or it could have been somewhere else. But I believe I saw a comment from possibly David Marshall's daughter or granddaughter or somebody like that, and she was saying, I'm so pleased to see that people out there like my father or grandfather's music, and he hasn't made any music in a long time, but he's thinking about maybe doing it again. Now, that was several years ago. So I don't know if David Marshall still actively makes music or not. I would hope that he does. He would be a great person, I think, for somebody like Tipper on Celebrating Appalachia to interview someday, maybe. And we've talked about that, folks that she could interview for the channel. But anyway, I love his music. I love his singing, and I could go on and on, but I guess I should stop now. The reason Pap wrote the third verse is he liked the song and he started singing it out in church and places like that by himself. And if you don't have that long saxophone break, the song is just over with like that because it really only has the 2 verses. So that's why Pap thought, I'll write a third verse just to make this a little bit longer. And I guess his third verse comes off of focusing on that humility, that feeling, a personal feeling of humility, a little bit, not completely, but just focusing on more on the greatness of Christ. And I love that line, whether it was written by David Marshall or whoever came up with it. Let me carry your shoes and wash your feet. That's just such a beautiful line. And also, let me follow you. I hope you enjoyed that song anywhere close to as much as I do. I don't know why I didn't share it here on the channel years ago. And Pap and I never tried to sing it as a duet, but I kind of wish that we had. Moving on to those other topics, I'll try to be quick because this video has already gotten longer than I meant for it to be. I want to thank everyone for the live stream. I would have been happy and pleased if a couple hundred people watched it, but thousands were watching it. I was just blown away. I think partly that's because YouTube, they have certain things that they want you to do. And we had never done a live stream on this channel. And I think they jumped behind it. When I say they, I really mean the algorithm. I think jumped behind that and promoted it. I have no other explanation. Well, I have one other partial explanation, but as to why it would get 17,000 views, in less than 24 hours. That's just amazing. But another thing I've never done on this channel is a short, and I'm going to come back to that. The other explanation of why it got so many is I know that Tipper hyped it on her channel, which is a much bigger channel, and the folks on her channel just love hearing her in those live streams. So I think those two things combined, but it was such a success. It was so much fun. I do want to do it again, although the one thing that makes me hesitant, and I hope that we can improve before the next time, is the audio quality. The audio quality was fine when we were talking, but as soon as I started singing, it was like an automatic gain control kicked in and kind of smothered it down. And the guitar has this strange, the old term they used to use way back is woe and flutter, but it has a thing in the guitar that shouldn't be there. The best thing I might be able to compare it to, if you've ever spoken or sung into a fan that was turning, and it has that's in the guitar in that live stream, and it's not in any of my other videos. So it's something about the live stream, the Wi-Fi, or just something, I don't know. But I'm hoping that Tipper maybe we can figure it out before we do another live stream. Because if I go back and try to watch the live stream, I can't bear to watch it. Because the sound quality, once the music starts, is so bad. It's great during the talking, but it's not good at all in the music. And I first thought maybe it needs more time to finish processing or something, but I watched it the next day and it still sounded bad, but I'll go back and check it again. But everybody was so nice, so many great comments. And speaking of comments, I'm way behind on answering comments. I haven't answered yet any of the ones on the Deck the Halls video that I did with my nephew Ben, so I've got to catch up on those. Tipper tried to stay, responding during the live stream, but I just thank everybody for coming out and making it so fun, knowing that many folks were listening. That really kind of, I guess you'd say, made it worthwhile, and Lord willing, hopefully we'll do some more. Yesterday's show with Mr. Doyle Dykes was just, it's not an exaggeration to say just one of the thrills of my lifetime. And I told Doyle, I said, I'll for as long as I can remember things until I pass away, or I lose my mind where I can't remember things, that's how long I'll remember that experience. Such a great show, such a beautiful venue. Everybody was so nice. I got to meet Jake Johnson, who is Haley Johnson, married to Haley Johnson, one of Doyle's daughters, and you've heard me talk about their YouTube channel, Haley's Mandolin Ranch. He is an amazing bass player, musician, and we just had so much fun joking around and just swapping stories back there in the green room, as they call it, backstage. The performance was just wonderful. The first 5 or 6 songs that Doyle did, he started by himself and then he called Jake out there, but they were just, it was almost like being blown back in your seat on a roller coaster ride. It was so good. The crowd was just eating it up. And then there were all those beautiful kind of tender moments when, Doyle would give testimony and he would tell different stories that were just so poignant. I got to do the Gene Autry medley, Christmas medley with Jake and Doyle, and that went well. People seemed to like it. And I got to do Mary's Boy Child, that song, which I sang, a Christmas song, which I sang in the live stream. And then Doyle had me come back up one last time to do a recitation of the poem. I'm going to put the author's name down below, who wrote that beautiful poem called The Christmas Guest, The Christmas Guest. And it was something Grandpa Jones kind of made famous. And of course I couldn't read it or recite it like Grandpa, but I did my best. And Doyle and Jake played beautiful music in the background. People seemed to really be moved by it. So it was just, I told Doyle the only thing that could make it better is if all my friends and family and all of you all could have been there and heard it. That was the only thing that could make it any better than it was. It was just so great. The last thing, the video that I have coming up, I may try to do it as a short. I've never done a short here on this channel, and I clipped out a couple of songs that Pap wrote from a couple of performances that Hickory Stand did, where we did some of Pap's songs, and I started to use them as shorts. But with a short, they don't want it filmed like this. It has to be, they want it like this. Well, if I do like that and of the band, then you're not going to be able to see everybody. Certain people will be cut out. So that's why I haven't done one. But I may do a short coming up where I share a brief little bit of audio that I found while I was remixing Joy to the World. I mentioned in the live stream that that's the only song from this Christmas album that Pap and I did in 2012. That's the only song that I remixed. The rest of them I just uploaded so that people could download them from all those different online platforms in the future. I don't think they're kind of finished processing yet, but in the process of remixing Joy to the World, I found just some brief audio of me and Pap talking. Normally that kind of thing gets erased. We were talking during the guitar break. So I would have been sort of in the control room and Pap would have been in the other room with his headphones on, to sing his harmony into the guitar mic. And I'll share that audio. It made me smile. I know it will make Tipper smile just to hear Pap's voice again. It's very brief, but it's just us talking about kind of what we're doing. So before I cleaned that track and kind of erased that out of the recording, I copied it over onto a CD so we could have it. And I'll share that. And I may talk a little bit more about that song and just kind of what we were doing. But I was surprised that it was there. Usually you erase that kind of stuff so there's no danger of it getting into the final mix. We were talking during a guitar break, so normally you have the vocal tracks muted or pulled down during the guitar break anyway. But a lot of times you erase that kind of thing just to be safe anyway, because what if you're doing the perfect mix and then you forget to mute those or pull them down and then you hear that? In fact, I usually even go in and erase all the breaths in between each words. each word or each line in a song, any kind of noises, you erase them. Not so much that they're going to be a distraction, like a breath is even going to be noticed by the listener, but you only have so much sort of headroom to play with, and you want your recording to be as loud as it can be, your finished recording. And even a breath can take up a little bit of that space, whatever it would be, like a half of a decibel or a tenth of a decibel. You erase that stuff just to kind of help with that. But for whatever reason, in that Joy to the World, I had not erased any of those breath sounds, and I had not erased that talking. So in a future short, maybe next Tuesday, I'll let you hear that little conversation, which is just 2 or 3 sentences between me and Pap, and maybe I can even put like closed captioning or text on there so you can be sure you understand what we're saying, and then I'll talk a little bit about the song. But I hope you've enjoyed this rather long Original Thursday, and we'll try to keep going with Christmas stuff, Christmas material. King of the Jews is not a Christmas song, but it is about Jesus, who is the reason for the season. It's what Christmas is all about and what we should be celebrating. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.